Overrun, author's notes. This story is not suited for kids and contains references to blood and gore. It is based on roleplay in DayZ and is considered fan fiction. Chapter 1. What the hell is going on? The female mumbles to herself as the vibrations intensify and her merchandise starts to fall from the shelves. She walks out of the large military tent that has been her home for the last couple of years and looks around. As she looks around, several other tents in the area collapse. Earthquake? No, can't be, not around here. She thinks to herself for a split second before she hears the all-too-familiar groans of the infected. She slowly starts to back up as she draws out her flare gun and shoots a flare-up in the air, just as her husband has taught her. She gasps in horror as she can see infected as far as she can see, and for a split second, she hesitates to move but starts to run to her car and jumps in. The 10-year-old Volkswagen spins a few too many rotations, just enough for someone to believe it won't start, but roars to life on the fifth turn of the engine. She floors the ging, making dirt and gravel fly from the front wheels as the car starts to move. Somewhere in the north. Mikko wakes up at the table and curses slightly again for falling asleep at the table. What was that? He wonders to himself as he looks over at Alexis, who sleeps on the other side of the door. A soft jingle can be heard from a lamp as the next vibration comes. And even though it's way too dark outside, Mikko can't help but look out through the window. Mikko stands up, walks silently to the small bedroom, and opens the door. As he does, his stomach goes into overdrive, and he places a finger over his lips. He gently shakes Alexis, who remains quiet as she wakes up. As the next tremble comes, the lamp falls from the shelf and goes out, and the all-too-familiar growls from the infected can be heard. The two of them silently move to the wall, out of sight from any windows. It doesn't take long until the sound from the infected is so loud, the two of them cover their ears in stuff that is not bolted down falls from where they are standing. After about 45 minutes, the noise dies down and goes silent. What the hell was that? Alexis asks, slightly shaken from the event. That was the largest horde of infected I have seen. Mikko answers, we need to warn people. Alexis concludes, I agree, but we need to move to do so. He answers as he looks over at his broken radio that did take a tumble from the table. Well, let's go then. Northwest Airfield later the same day. We should check the ATC. It seems to be a popular place for those foreigners to sleep. The 7 men start to walk toward the ATC, and as they get close, they start to hear rumbling sounds from the buildings around them. What is that? One of the men asks as he looks around. Before anyone can answer, the all-too-familiar moans from the infected can be heard together with a high-pitched scream from one of them. Without thinking, the man raises his gun and shoots it, and, at that point, seals the fate for all of them as they start to run toward the ATC and cover. As they get into the ATC building, one of the men stumbles and falls, and the infected are over him in a matter of seconds. He closes the door and bars it as the horde impacts it with a thud, making the door sway from the strain. The men look around in the ATC and soon notice there are only 6 of them. Where is Ivan? He did not make it. Now move. The men run up to the top of the ATC, and for a moment, all of them watch as the infected pours in from the northwest. Vibor, same time, the 2 men stop as they can hear a massive amount of gunfire from Northwest Airfield. And then, after a few seconds, it goes silent. Holy shit! What was that all about? The younger of the 2 asks. Sounded like someone was fed up with those Chernorussian fanatics. The older man answers as he starts to walk again. So, where do we go next? The younger asks, I was planning to go to the new soup kitchen and see if Mikhail is there, but I'm not sure I want to travel through the airbase at this time. I guess you are talking about the one in Severograd. Yay. Hey, I see movement up there, the boy says as he looks toward Northwest Airbase. The man runs in a full sprint down from there as if he is panicking. Hey, what's wrong? The older man asks as he gets closer. I infected. Thousands of them. Wait, surely you did mean hundreds. No, I said what I meant. They tore down the entire ATC. I'm Finan, and this is Vit. You can travel with us and tell us all about this. I'm Casimir. They killed all of them. How many were in your group? 8 with me. I thought I did see movement and was ordered to investigate. I heard the gunfire, and by the time I saw what had happened, The entire ATC had fallen over. I did see all of them, they just kept on coming. Finn and Vit look at each other and back to the man. So what direction did they move? Vit asks. They moved southeast. We need to warn people. I suggest we pass through the airbase and head straight to Severograd. They might have a radio that's stronger than this handheld I have. But the infected. Casimir looks at the two of them with almost horror in his eyes. They must have passed by now, and if there are any stragglers, I'm sure we can take care of them, Finn says as he starts to turn north. Chapter 2. Most of the day passed when Mikhail and Alexis finally reached the soup kitchen and entered the small building. As he ties his armband on his jacket, Ace approaches him. Long time no see. What brings you back from the outdoors? A story best to be discussed in private for now. Ace nods at Mikhail to follow him, and Alexis makes her way through the crowd of people. So what's going on? Ace asks in a low tone as they enter a back room. Me and Alexis woke up to a horde of infected today. Nothing new there. We have seen a lot of them lately. Well, this one did take nearly 40 minutes to pass us. Ace's expression changes. 40 minutes, but that would mean we are talking thousands of them. You better make that tens of thousands. Ace starts to walk in circles as he always does while deep in thought. We heard some distant gunfire from Northwest Air Base. Could it have been someone attacking them? Yes, that coincides with the southeastern direction they did travel. Now, it also depends on the time of this shooting. We heard them roughly 1 hour ago while investigating a robbery at the ATM. Then yes, that could have been them. Northwest Air Base, same time, the small group of 3 people slowly makes their way through the Northwest Air Base in silence and looks over where the ATC tower used to be. I can't believe they managed to tear down the entire tower, Vit says in a solemn voice. Well, with enough numbers, they can do a lot, Finn answers as he looks at the ground. I'm no tracker, but the number of footsteps I have seen here, I'm sure we are talking tens of thousands, not thousands, as you said. Casimir shakes his head in disbelief. Why would they attack such a large horde? Casimir mumbles. They might not have realized how large it was. There are a lot of buildings over there that could impede their overall view of the situation. Finn explains. Yeah, that must be it. Skullesty Isle. Oh, I really need more training, she mumbles to herself as she finally reaches the safety of Skullesty Isle. She looks over at the direction she came from, but can't see any trace of the infected, and starts to walk inland. As she reaches her husband, Roland, she starts to speak. I'm praying to the Almighty that your radio is still working. Roland looks up from his papers, a bit surprised to see his wife here and soaking wet. What happened to you? And why did you leave your trading post? Well, the horde of thousands of infected convinced me. Wait, you joking, right? No, and they are moving this way, so we need to warn people. Without a word, Roland brings out his field transceiver. This is Roland calling anyone on 86.4. There is a large horde of infected, in excess of 1,000 head, traveling on the southern road. Warn as many as you can. Roland, out. Well, that's all I can do. Let's hope someone is listening. She walks around the tables, wraps her arms around Roland, and hugs him. Mikhail here. Can you confirm that information? Roland here. Yes, my wife has seen it with her own eyes. Copy that. Then I have some bad news. There are 2 hordes. The one I did see was traveling southeast and is at least 10,000 strong. Roland walks out of the small boathouse and looks at the map. He draws some lines on it and soon comes to a conclusion and runs back into the boathouse again. Roland, are you still there? Mikhail's voice comes out of the small speaker. Mikhail, listen. According to some rough calculations, the 2 hordes might converge at Solnichny. I repeat, horde might converge at Solnichny. Copy that. Now do me a favor and stay safe on that isle of yours. Yeah, I'm not planning to go anywhere. Over and out. Mikhail slowly puts down the microphone and looks over at Ace and Tech. We need more info on this crisis, Mikhail says. Wait, you're not planning a scouting mission, are you? Ace says. I am, but not a regular one. I know you two are not on the best terms with Liliana and her group, but let's face it, she has the only qualified helicopter pilot. And what makes you believe she will not throw you out of that helicopter once it has taken off? Tech asks. Because I'm not telling you guys everything. just as I don't tell Liliana everything. So right now I'm on good terms with her and her group. It pays off to be nice and forgiving sometimes. Tech and Ace look at each other, not sure if they just got a scolding from one of their lower-ranking members or not. Well, I, for one, will not stop trusting you right now, Ace finally says after a long silence. Okay, go ahead and fill Liliana in on the situation. But for all that's holy, be careful, Tech says, but seems a bit uncertain. Mikhail and Alexis leave the soup kitchen and walk away as Mikhail contacts Liliana. Liliana here, what's going on, Mikhail? I need a huge favor, and it is in your best interest too. I'm listening, Liliana interrupts. There are currently 2 hordes of infected in South Segoria. The one I saw is at an excess of 10,000 strong, and the other one I can confirm from word of mouth is at least 1,000 strong. I need to scout them out and get more information. Liliana gasps as she hears the numbers. I can tell you're serious, but what can we do? I need a helicopter and a pilot, and last I did check. You're the only one with both at your disposal. You got it. Where do you want us to pick you up? I'm currently at the soup kitchen. Can you pick me up at the church below Devil's Castle? Yeah, we will be there in a few minutes, Liliana. Over and out. Stay safe. Chapter 3, Mikhail can hear the helo coming in from a mile away from the south. I can't believe this will be my first ride in a helo, Alexis says with some excitement in her voice. Well, it's not that hyped, he says with a smile. So, it is not your first time? No, it's been a few times by now. And I bet you hated every minute of it, right? Yes, of course, we have 2 legs and can't fly, so we are not supposed to, he says with a teasing smile. Alexis makes a face at him as the Huey slowly comes down to the ground, and Liliana opens the sliding door for them. The 2 of them step in and sit down as Mikhail hands Alexis a headset. Can you hear me? Mikhail asks as he plugs his headset into the helo comm system. Yeah, we can hear you. So where are we going? Liliana asks. Well, the first horde was traveling southeast from Northwest Air Base. Let's start with that one. Mikhail leans forward toward the pilot with a map. With the speed they are traveling, they should be somewhere around here, he says and points at the map. Okay, hold on to something. Here we go. Alexis beams like a ray of light as the helo takes off, and she can't help but make a slight giggling sound that makes Liliana smile at her. First time, huh? Liliana asks and looks over at Alexis, who nods and can't wipe her grin from her face. I'm glad you enjoy it, Liliana says and smiles. Oh my God, you were not exaggerating. He turns the helo in a wide arch so everyone can see the massive horde down below. Holy shit, you were not exaggerating, Liliana says as she leans toward Mikhail to see outside. Hey, pilot, where will they end up if they continue in this direction? Mikhail asks, even though he knows the answer. Somewhere around Solnichny. We need to warn any people in and around that town, but let's check on that other horde first, Mikhail says. Okay, where to? Go straight for Solnichny and follow the highway south. Okay, here we go. It doesn't take long until all of them can see the east coast and the helo turns south. They are almost at Chernogorsk before they see another absolutely massive horde. Damn, she was wrong. This one, no doubt, is double the size. What do you mean? Liliana asks. She said thousands. Okay, let's head back to Solnichny and see if there are any people there. I suggest we land on the highway to attract people. That is, if you're willing to risk it. Only if you help us defend it if someone wants to take advantage of our nice gesture. Of course. I will help you defend it. No doubt about that. Okay, land at Solnichny, but keep the engine running, Liliana tells the pilot. The pilot nods, and a few minutes later, they land on the highway at Solnichny. Gorka, the young girl, picks up her bag with supplies and walks out of the local clinic. Are you ready to leave, June? The man at the well asks as he fills up some bottles. Yeah, let's go, Rurik. Hey, you did your best. We are doctors, not miracle workers. Yeah, I know, I felt like I could have done more for him. As the 2 of them start to walk toward altar, both of them can hear a helo. It is hovering, Rurik says as he looks over toward the sound. But instead of noticing the helicopter, he sees a horde of infected, unlike any other he has seen. He grabs June by the arm and runs into the barn on the outskirts of Gorka. Stay silent, he almost hisses at her. Dust and dirt fall on top of them from inside of the roof as the trembles intensify. June buries her face in Rurik's jacket, and for a moment, she is terrified. Not terrified of dying, but terrified of not being able to help anyone else who needs her help. Severograd later that day. "Can I have your attention, please?" Tech voice thunders over the small crowd inside and outside of Soup Kitchen. As the people came to silence, he started to speak again. "It has come to my attention that two massive hordes of infected have been seen traveling southeast from Northwest Air Base, and to the best of my knowledge, the other one is traveling along the Southern Highway. Now, before you all pick up your guns and go and hunt them, I want to inform you that they are both estimated to be over 10,000 strong." A mumble goes through the crowd and Tech waves down. "What we need to do is prepare to fight these two hordes, and we need to work together. I know all of you don't like each other much and would not mind seeing your enemies die to this horde. But if we are to stand even a remote chance against this threat, we need to work together." The mumble starts again, and people look at each other. "I'm a foreigner, and I just helped this man here who is a part of Osalari, usually not too friendly toward my kind. As a matter of fact, I have been tortured and almost brought to death by them. If I can forgive them, I'm sure you all can put aside your differences for the better good of us all," Finn says as he walks up to Tech and shakes his hand in a friendly greeting. "You got me and any willing people from Hidden Hope here to help you." "Thank you, Fanan." The two of them walk indoors. "I'm looking for Mikal. Mikal is out on a scouting mission on the two hordes I just mentioned. I hope he is not traveling on foot." "No, he asked Liliana for help." "Well, Mikal is that guy who can make friends with almost anyone." "That is true for sure." Chapter 4. After standing next to the helo for about 10 minutes, Mikal starts to speak. "Well, if there would have been anyone here, they would have come by now." The pilot waves at them to come, and all three walk over to him. "We need to go now. I'm running low on fuel." He shouts at them, and Mikal nods to him before waving Liliana and Alexis into the helo. After Mikal makes sure all of them can hear him, he starts to speak. "There is nothing else we can do for now, but from what we have seen, I'm sure we all have to work together to destroy this horde." "I agree, but it's going to be hard to get everyone to work together. Hell, I have problems working with Alistar, for one," Liliana says as she looks out over the ocean. "Well, your boys shot me and almost killed me at one point, and I can forgive you and your boys for it. Are you telling me there is no way you could work with some less good friends for a few hours for the benefit of us all?" Liliana stays silent for a while before speaking. "You have a fair point, but my question is, can Tech and Ace?" "Ace will do whatever Tech tells him, and you have to trust me when I say Tech is not as bad as you believe he is. Hell, he has saved my life more than once, among a lot of other people he doesn't know. And remember, I'm not officially a part of Alistair." Tech and Ace look up at the sky as they can hear a helo coming in for a landing on top of the nearby PD, and 5 people jump out and start to kill the frenzied infected below the police station before starting to move down and toward them. Short greetings are exchanged before they walk inside. "So I guess you convinced her to help us," Tech says as he looks over at Liliana and her pilot. "Hey, don't be like that. We need all the help we can get, and you guys were partially just as guilty for that disaster," Mikal says with some aggression in his voice, which surprises both Liliana and Tech. "And don't say you did not raid them because I know your boys did." "Well, enough about that. The second horde is 2, maybe 3 times larger than the one passing Alexis and me, and there is a possibility that they might merge in Solnichi." Tech starts to walk in circles again as he is thinking. "We do not stand a chance against a horde like this if they merge, but we can thin them out," Alexis says, surprising everyone since she has been quiet most of the time. "Group A, the group me and Mikhail did see, are in a deep forest by now and too hard to get a good overview of, but the large group B is traveling along the coast." That's not a bad idea. Skullesty Isle could serve as a good spot, and I'm sure Roland can supply us with ammo if needed. I don't mind shooting a few infected, but why don't we just let them travel through and we just keep an eye on them?" Ace asks. "That's a valid question, and the answer is they destroy everything but the ground they walk on. Just look at Northwest Air Base after they did walk through the AT, and several other buildings are, well, lack of other words, flattened," Finan says with a solemn voice. Finn is right. I did see it with my own eyes when the horde partially passed Gorka. Several houses fell together, including a barn. So Skolisty, with a few machine guns, shoots toward the mainland as they pass. Sounds easy enough, Tech says. Well, it is a valid option, but keep in mind it is close to 600-meter shots, so even with the M249 with ACOG, it's not easy to hit, Mikhail says as he looks over at Alexis. Well, if we want to get there before them, we need to go now, Finan says and looks at the others. Agreed. I hope we have enough cars, Tech says and looks over at Ace. We have 2 cars right now that we can squeeze in, maybe 8 people in, if they don't mind sitting in each other's lap. Ace says and looks over at Tech. Well, I can get a truck here that Mikhail was nice to donate to us, Finan says and looks over at Mikhail with a smile. Well, before all of you go ahead and donate your cars and trucks, keep in mind they can't be in a safe place like us on the Isle, unless a certain helo pilot here has enough fuel and can move them over to the Isle, Mikhail says as he looks over to the helo pilot. I can, but it is a matter of fuel. I was running on fumes when we landed. Well, if it runs on regular, we can fix that at the fuel station on the outskirts of the city. It still should have some fuel left, Ace says. Okay, with that settled, I suggest we get moving before we are too late, Mikhail says as he starts to walk away. Skolisty Isle. Margaret looks over at the mainland with her husband, Roland, next to her. They see a large group of people leaving the 2 cars in a truck. Some seem to swim over, and others get flown over by helo. The 2 of them cover their eyes as sand and seawater gets whipped up as the helo hovers just a meter over the ground, ready to fly off and pick up more people. One of the swimmers is Mikhail, and as he reaches the shore, he walks over to Roland. Hello there, old friend. I'm glad to see both you and your wife are in safety, Mikhail says as he shakes Roland's hand. The feeling is mutual. So what's going on? Roland asks as he looks at the helo making its second run. Well, we were planning to thin out the horde from here, and we're hoping you could help us. Sure, what can I do? We need M249s equipped with ACOGs and ammo. Lots of ammo. I can help you with the M249s, but I'm sorry ammo is hard to come by, and I must ask you all to trade for it. I understand, and I'm sure we can come to an agreement. Chapter 5, Gorka. Later that day, June looks at Rurik, who is pinned down on the floor by a large wooden beam from the roof. I have to go and get help. I can't move it on my own, she says as she looks at Rurik, who seems to be in less pain after she gave him some painkillers. Wait, I did see a chainsaw in one of the sheds across the road. At the clinic. That would help. I'll see if I can find it, June says with a smile. Well, hurry. This bed is not that comfy. Skolisty Isle, same time Mikhail and Alexis look over at the mainland and as the helo struggles to get the large truck over to the Isle. Well, that's all of it, and not a minute too late, Mikhail says as he sees the horde coming down the street. That's a problem, Alexis says as she notices a large amount of the infected is moving far up the mountain and in the woods. Indeed, some of them might even pass Tolga, he says as he looks at the horde with concern. Some of the other men and women who also notice the problem walk over to them. Listen, we are only here to thin them out a bit, so just shoot as many as you can, and remember to adjust your sights for 600 meters, Mikhail says with a slightly louder voice for everyone to hear. But can't we use the helo to shoot them from above? This time it is Meat Mama talking. Mikhail looks over at the pilot. Maybe a 2-minute flight, but that stretches it when it comes to fuel. Remember, we need to get the cars and the people over to the mainland again. Well, I don't think we need 2 minutes, Mikhail says as he looks around. Sonny, Mikhail calls out. Yeah, what's up? Do you still have rockets for that RPE? Yeah, 7 of them in my backpack. Mikhail shakes his head, thinking, warning high, explosive guy, and smiles. How would you feel like shooting a few of them at the horde from a helo? Also, Callum, you take an M249 and kill as many as you can. The 2 men look at each other for a moment. Hell yeah, you better believe we want to, both of them say almost in unison. Okay, let's set up and get that helo in the air, Mikhail calls out. You know, you would be a great leader, Tech says as the group of people starts to set up on the beach. Thank you, but I'm a better advisor. I'm only a good leader in the heat of the situation. Mikhail looks over at the horde and notices they seem to not react to noise. That's weird. He mumbles to himself as the gunfire starts, and he can see several infected falls to the ground, but several bullets fall short in the water before the shooters adjust their sights. What's weird? Ace asks. Well, everyone knows infected are drawn to sound. They seem oblivious of both the gunfire and the helo. I did not think about that. In the helo, Callum, you can't stand behind me. Stand next to me and make sure that the door is open. Sonny calls out on the helo's intercoms. Callum nods and takes a knee next to him as the helo takes off and flies over the horde. Soon, the two men open fire, and as the first rocket hits the horde, the pilot almost has to ascend to avoid the infected flying bits and pieces of them. Gorka, half an hour later. I found it, she calls out as she enters the barn, and for a moment she thinks Rurik is dead as the infected stands right over him and is starting to lean down over him. She quickly drops her chainsaw and draws her knife, and in a few steps she is right behind the infected and stabs it in the back of the head and pushes it aside as she pulls out the knife. Holy crap, that was close, Rurik says as he looks at the infected falling to the side of him. I found the chainsaw, but I don't know how to start it. I'll help you, he says with a grin. First, make sure the fuel is turned to F, or it might say O. Okay, I found it. It is set to F. Okay, now press the black knob down 3 times. He grins again, and June concludes the pain suppressors seem to lose their effect. Do you mean this one? She asks as she points at a plastic knob on the carburetor. Yes, that's it. Now take a good grip on the chainsaw and pull the cord, he says and grins badly as pain returns and spikes all the way up in his hip. June pulls as hard as she can, and on the 3rd try, the saw starts and she gives it some gas to get it going. Rurik makes a line with his finger where she should start to see the beam. She reused the engine and started to saw, and to her surprise, it went through with ease. Behind you, Rurik shouts. She spins around, swings the chainsaw, and presses the gas all the way as the chain cuts into the infected and sprays Rurik with blood and gore. She turns off the chainsaw and looks at the infected. She almost splits in half. Are you okay? Yeah, she says as she turns around and looks at Rurik, who is completely covered in blood and gore, and can't help but laugh at the sight. I think I need some new clothes, he says with a smile. Well, let's get your leg in order first. Scalistiile. Seize fire, Mikhail shouts out, and the words get repeated along the firing line. Well, I guess that's all we can do from here, Mikhail says as he stands up from one of the M249s and looks at the empty ammo boxes. His ears are ringing it even though he has hearing protection, and his shoulder is throbbing from the gun. Well, I'm not sure how many we got, but enough to cover the asphalt for some distance, Sonny says as he stands up from his gun. That's for sure. Now there is only the rest of them left, Mikhail says as he looks over at Sonny and smiles. Chapter 6. Berezino Pub. We are almost there, just a bit further, June says as Rurik starts to grunt in pain. The two of them stumble into the bar, and Grace looks up, a bit surprised. Wow, what happened to him? She asks, looking at Rurik's bloody clothing. It's a long story, but don't worry, it is not his blood, June says as she slowly lets him down on the floor, leaning against the bar. So what happened to you two? She asks as June starts working on Rurik's leg. We got overrun by infected in Gorka, and the barn collapsed over us. Wait, you telling me infected collapsed the barn you two was in? Yes, Rurik answers with a strained voice. My God, how many were there? I did not see all of them, but a couple of thousands, Rurik answers. Grace looks at the two of them in disbelief. Severograd, same time Mikhail looks around at the massive number of people gathered in and around the soup kitchen before he walks inside. He nods at Tech to come to him as he walks inside the back room. This is why I hate being a leader and why I'm a better advisor, Mikhail says as Tech closes the door behind him. Why, what's wrong? The problem is we do not have enough people to attack that horde, and everyone out there will do whatever it takes, and before this is over, most of them will be dead. Tech takes a deep breath and sighs. What you just described is the burden of leadership. I face it every day. How do you handle it? Mikhail asks as he turns toward Ba and Tech. I think to myself that everyone I lead chooses to follow me and accept my orders, just as you did. But it is equally important to hear people and see people. Look at that man there. What do you see? I see a proud man doing whatever he will be told, Mikhail says. I see a proud man with doubt and fears, but also trust. Trust in you. You have done something here no one ever managed to do. You have brought everyone together under one banner. Even if I wanted to, I could never take leadership from you in a group like this. Do you know why? Because they trust you? I have enemies out there that would never work for me. But you have friends everywhere, even the most unlikely people. People you have chosen to help in the past who wish to just return the favor to you. Tech says, placing his finger right in Mikhail's chest. Now go out there and don't think of what might happen to them, but what we all are trying to achieve, and listen to them. Thank you, boss, Mikhail says as he turns around and walks out. Mikhail looks around at everyone and stops as he sees Finan, Vet, and Alexis standing a bit further back. I'm sure you all have noticed our problem here. We do not have enough people. Mikhail looks around again, and yes, there it is. Fear, but also determination. So what is your suggestion? Mikhail asks as he sweeps his hand over the crowd. I say we attack. I, for one, don't want to live in the shadow of those infected, Dmitri says. Neither do I, but I would like to see all of us survive this. So is there anyone who can get us more people? Mikhail looks around, but they all stay silent. Maybe I can help. Mikhail turns around and can see June standing there with Rurik next to her on some improvised crutches. What do you have in mind? Well, there is this secretive group called the Sentinels. I know where they live, she says with a smile. Well, anything could help. How many are they? Oh, I don't know, but a qualified guess is 50 to 100, she says with a smile. Mikhail can't help but smile like a small kid at Christmas. You, my dear, most likely saved a lot of life with this news. Can you get them here? Well, it's just the small problem of finding them and convincing them to come. They did not reach that number of people by being careless. Well, if you can get in contact with them, I'm sure I can convince them. In an unknown location. Johnny, the man calls out as he jogs over to what seems to be an officer. Dallas, do you have news for me about the horde? Yes, June contacted us. It is 2 of them. And the second one is almost 3 times as large. That's the bad news. The good news is that some guy named Mikhail has managed to get a large force together, but they need our help. Their numbers are not large enough. Johnny seems to be thinking for a while before talking again. I need to bring this up with the commander and the rest of the officers. While I do that, you try to find out what kind of people this Mikhail has managed to scrounge up. I already know all that, and I better come with you and explain what kind of person Mikhail is. Johnny looks at Dallas for a short while before nodding for him to come. The 2 of them walk into a large tent with a radio and a large table with a map on it. Johnny walks over to the radio, turns it on, and starts to speak. This is John calling all officers to the officers' tent. The 2 of them wait for a while before the other officers enter the tent and greet them. So, what do we have? Jack asks as he enters the tent. Johnny nods at Dallas to begin. Well, we got an army, and that's the good news. The bad news is that there are 2 hordes, and the second is roughly 3 times larger than the one we see. This army leader is a Swedish man named Mikael Hansen, and here is some more good news. He managed to get everyone to work together, even the Russians and the Chernorussian extremists. A mumble is heard in the tent. Now, even with this grand army, he doesn't have enough people because the 2 hordes have been confirmed to have merged. I, for one, wish to help them. But the reason we have this meeting is because of Mikhail and his hold on this army. The people will follow him and only him. Now I can vouch for Mikhail. He is a great guy who has helped more people than I care to count. And that's also why people follow him. So you telling me if we want to help this Mikhail, I need to relinquish command? Jack asks. I do not think so. Mikhail is a truck driver and a hunter with no military background. And he is not afraid to ask people who know what they are doing, so I'm sure he will gladly agree to a shared command. You seem to know a lot about this man, Terrence says as he looks over at Dallas. Well, he became a good friend after he saved my life a few months back. So you are telling us you're biased? Maybe I am, but just look at the army he managed to put together. An army that contains people who would normally shoot at each other. Chapter 7. Jack wakes up as he hears voices speaking in a hushed tone. He walks out of the small tent and walks over to Dallas, Terrence, and George as their words get more intense. This is a huge risk, revealing us like this. George says, I don't disagree with you, but what if they all die due to this horde and we stand alone against it? What then? Dallas counters. I have to agree with Dallas on this topic, Jack says, surprising all of them. Sir, we just recovered after the last trap when we lost almost half of our force, and now some random guy with our entire force? Terrence says, do I need to remind my officers of what our main goal is? And no, I'm not handing over our entire force to a stranger but co-leading with him. And in my opinion, that is an excellent way to gain trust and maybe even more allies, which is another of our goals. Don't you agree? Now, Dallas is a trusted member of our group, and if he feels we can trust him, I'm not going to question his judgment, just as I would not question any one of you if you said you trusted someone. Severograd early morning. Mikhail walks around the city and looks at all the tents and other makeshift shelters that people have set up before he stops outside of Soup Kitchen and sits down by the still smoldering fire. He pulls out his weapon cleaning kit and starts to disassemble his Colt M9. And even though it doesn't need cleaning, he begins to clean it and whistle a low tune. I have heard you whistle that before. What tune is that? Alexis asks as she sits down next to him. My father made it as far as I know, Mikhail answers and looks at Alexis thinking, why could I not have been 20 years younger? It is a nice tune, she says as she leans against Mikhail's shoulder. I'm scared. Mikhail stops with what he is doing and looks over at Alexis again. Only a fool would not be, Mikhail says as he leans over and gently pulls out Alexis's sidearm and places it in front of her before pulling out another cleaning kit from his backpack. Remove the magazine and make sure the chamber is empty. She looks at the weapon for a moment before doing as told. Now push here and pull back. He gently guides her hands over the slide and pulls the slide away, revealing the chamber and magazine slide. Now clean it until it looks as if it was brand new and think of something that makes you happy. So that's why you always clean your guns, even when you don't have to. Mikhail almost jumps as he hears Tech's voice from behind him. It reminds me of simpler times, Mikhail answers as he looks at Alexis working on her weapon and starts to smile slightly. Mikhail continues to clean his weapon and whistles the tune as Tech sits down in front of them. All three of them have drifted into thought as the silence is interrupted by engine sounds, and Mikhail looks up at the mixed convoy of cars and trucks coming down the road. He helps Alexis to put her sidearm together after he is done with his and holster his weapon as some people approach him. Welcome to Soup Kitchen. I guess you're the ones known as the Sentinels, Mikhail says as he stands up. Yes, and you must be Mikhail. Yes, sir, and who might you be? I'm Jack, and these are my officers. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Let's go inside and talk. Together with Alexis, the 7 men walk inside, and as they do, Jack starts to speak. I must say I'm impressed that you managed to get all these people to behave. It did take some convincing, but in the end, this is the only country we have, and it's not that large either. But in the end, I'm only a truck driver, and I do some hunting, so we do not only need men. We also need people who know what the hell they are doing, and to be honest, I do not. You're strong for admitting that. We can all agree that no one could take leadership from you, but I would suggest a cooperative leadership. Jack continues, and that is something we have to agree on, mainly because I want as many people to return alive as possible, and it doesn't matter to me what group they are a part of. They are all friends to me. I hope you are prepared to lose people thought. That is something we can't avoid, George says as he looks up at Mikhail. Mikhail looks at the heavily bearded man in front of him. I have lost people before, sometimes as heroes, sometimes for doing the right thing, and lastly because of plain stupidity. And that last part is what I wish to avoid at all costs. We can't afford to be stupid. Mikhail looks out through the window and at the people who started to walk around outside. Every man and woman out there have a mother, a father, a friend. Mikhail looks over at Alexis before saying the last words. Or maybe a loved one. He turns around and faces them all. It might be your friend or worse, your loved one that dies because we are stupid. I lost one loved one, and it is something I would not even wish on my worst enemy. So let's make this as perfect as possible. Chapter 8. Berezino Afternoon. Mikhail looks around at the crowd of people moving around him and building up some defense with ditches filled with diesel and wood and barbed wire. His eyes stop scanning as he spots the large excavator that is digging up the road. I'm glad you are here. I would never have thought about this, Mikhail admits to Jack and the other officers. Well, considering these infected flattened and I don't think hiding in buildings would be a good idea, Jack says with a solemn voice. Alexis comes jogging down the street with some people from the local pub in tow. This is all of them, Alexis says as she gets to Mikhail. I guess you had a slow day, Grace. Not all days can be overcrowded. I did put a sign on the door in case someone comes telling them to get here for more information. Mikhail looks along the shoreline and can see the horde of infected slowly moving toward them. Okay, time to double time it. We got limited time to get ready. Wait, you leading all these people? Grace asks. Well, not alone, me and my friends here. This is Jack and his officers Terrence, Johnny, George, and Tom. A pleasure, ma'am. I have heard about your establishment and how you are trying to keep somewhat normality in these trying times. Jack says, Thank you. I'm sure we all do our best to make this our home, away from home. Mikhail looks through his binos at the horde and can't help but feeling fear as he cannot see an end to it. I hope this plan works, Jack. We need to burn as many as possible if we are even going to have a remote chance. Well, I'm not going to lie, but this is the first time for me to go up against creatures like this. But with enough smoke, they cannot see what's behind it, and they should just walk forward. Well, we just ran out of time. Deploy the smoke and retreat, Mikhail calls out. His words are repeated along with the people, and they start to move back toward the fuel station a few kilometers away. As they move, Mikhail drops a road flare in the diesel mixture, and the fire spreads quickly in the trenches. As they reach the fuel station, Mikhail turns around and looks back through his binos and shiver at the sight as the trenches in the central burn hole quickly get filled by burning infected. Well, it works, he says, handing the binos over to Jack. But we should have made them deeper. I don't think that matters. The smoke is clearing, and they have already started to move around the hazard, he says as he hands back the binos to Mikhail. God damn it, Mikhail calls out in frustration. We barely made a dent in their numbers. We need a new plan. Mikhail, you said it yourself and I agree. We have run out of time. We need to do our best with what we got, Jack says with a calm voice. Mikhail turns around and looks at all the people behind him and thinks, I will remember all of you. I swear this on my wife's grave. As if everyone notices Mikhail is looking at them, they stop moving around and look at him. They are ready to defend this country. The question is, are you? Jack says in a low tone. Mikhail stops his gaze as he finds Alexis again and looks at her. For a moment, she transforms into his late wife, Nora's face smiling at him. I have always been honest to you all, and that's most likely why most of you consider me a friend, so I will continue to be honest to you all. Mikhail takes a moment to collect his thoughts. The trap did not fully work, but we did reduce their numbers. We also have run out of options, so it is now or never. I will give you all the options to leave right now, no questions asked, and nothing against you personally if you wish to do so. We all have loved ones that we wish to take care of. Some of them are here and some are in the safety of their home. Mikhail says, waiting a few seconds before starting to speak again. Okay, let's get ready and show the infected whose country this is. Within minutes, the road is completely empty of people, and all that can be heard is the wind and the ocean before the rumble starts as the infected are coming down the road. As the infected get in and around the petrol station, a rocket is fired, and the infected, both burning and not flying, as the fuel station goes up in a massive explosion, and people start to shoot at the massive horde from surrounding buildings. The roar from the infected is deafening as they start to run in different directions toward the gunfire. People are running out of buildings as the doors and walls start to collapse around them. Keep moving back. Don't let them box you in, Mikhail calls out on the radio, and he keeps firing at the infected as they get closer to him. Suddenly, the familiar sound of a helicopter can be heard, And for a moment, Mikhail thinks it is Liliana's pilot. But when he sees the massive Russian gunship coming over the treetops, he can only see hope. The pass low over them all and starts to fire missiles at the horde, making Mikhail think, so this how war looks like, as he can see empty house collapse from the barrage and craters formed in the ground. For the first time in the battle, Mikhail sees hope as he moves forward to clear out the infected who are left behind. Mikhail walks over to the gunship as it lands on the beach and shortly after is followed by other survivors from the battle and is surprised to see the Russian trader stepping out of the helo's pilot seat and a young man jumps out of the gunner seat in front. "Hey, what happened to my invitation to this party?" he says in a joking way with his broad Russian accent, and Mikhail can't help but smile. "It must have been lost in the mail, old friend." "Well, it is a good thing I remembered seeing this helo on his roof," Vit says as he takes off the helmet that's more than twice the size of his head. "Vit, you are a fucking hero. I hope you know that," Mikhail says as he takes 2 steps forward and hugs the boy. "You really are," Tex says as he walks up to the 3 of them, followed by Alexis and George. "Where are Jack and the others?" Mikhail asked George. "Jack did not make it. The others I do not know. We got split up during the fighting," George says with a solemn voice. Mikhail looks in silence as more and more people come down to the beach. A quick scan of the crowd tells Mikhail that not even half of them have returned. "I'm sorry for your loss, George. But what he really means is, I'm sorry for all of you's losses." The end.